Our subject this morning is savings, the driving force of the economy, and the background is of course multifold. On one hand, there is a big question that has been discussed for many centuries. What is the driving force of economic development? What is the motor of economic growth? And the first time this debate has come in full swing was the classical economists reacted to the dominant opinion of their time, which Adam Smith called the mercantilist doctrine. So according to the mercantilists, you will see in a minute why I always talk about the mercantilists, or why it's in any case useful to talk a little bit about the mercantilists. According to the mercantilists, what drives the economy is spending. Monetary spending. And classical economics arose as a reaction against mercantilism. So according to the mercantilists, the more we spend, the higher its monetary expenditure, the better works the economy. And this concerns in particular consumer expenditure. The more people spend on consumer goods, the higher are the revenues of companies, therefore the higher are the profits of companies. Therefore, the more companies will also invest, will hire people and so on, so employment goes up, aggregate production goes up, the economy is running smooth. So what we need to do in order to promote economic growth, or one of the things in the case that the government can do, is to promote aggregate spending. In the 20th century, the same opinion has been promoted again by John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes revived mercantilism, which has been noted by his contemporaries. He said, well, what we need to do is to promote aggregate spending. He used a different vocabulary, he called it aggregate demand. We must stimulate aggregate demand, but ultimately it's the same thing. So aggregate spending runs the economy. In order to promote aggregate spending, you can do various things, but one of the things you can try to do is to increase the money supply within the country. And the more money is around, the more money tends to be spent. So how do you increase the money supply? Nowadays, of course, we have a very easy solution. We have a printing press. Right? We have fiat money, we have immaterial money, which can be produced at virtually zero cost. So we can just produce much more money, and then much more money will be spent. At the time of Adam Smith's writing, at the end of the 18th century, there were only very few experiments with fiat money, with immaterial fiat money, and only, as a rule, in very backward areas of the world economy, such as the American colonies, the British colonies in North America. So what did you do at the time? Well, at the time, the main tool was trade policy. That is, prohibitions, subsidies, etc., designed to promote exports, national exports, and to curtail imports. If you export more goods and services, then foreigners will pay you with what? Well, they will pay you with money, with commodity money, gold, silver, etc. So more money flows into the country, then within the country you can spend more money. The economy grows. By curtailing imports, you have high tariffs, etc., quotas, you prevent that money flows out of the country, so you keep it within the country. So that's what they did at the time. Unfortunately, it's clear that this policy cannot be applied by all countries at the same time. If France pursues such a policy, and the French did it, by the way, and let's say they are successful, so they attract more money within the borders of France, then this implies necessarily that some other countries have less money. Right? So it's a dog eats dog policy. One country wins, another country loses. That's what it is. Okay? So the countries were waging a lot of wars in the 17th and 18th century in the pursuit of this policy. Because all countries wanted to have their way, wanted to increase the inflow of money into their borders, and they couldn't do it all at the same time. Now comes Adam Smith, and Adam Smith rejects all of this. Adam Smith says they're completely wrong on both accounts. Not only are they wrong as far as the mode of economic analysis is concerned, mode of economic activity is concerned, but they're also wrong as to the impact of trade policy. So the first thing he says is that monetary expenditure has nothing to do with economic growth. The true causes of economic growth, of economic progress, are twofold. The division of labor and capital accumulation, that is, savings. So if you want to increase the wealth of the nation, you've got to encourage the population to live a frugal life. That is precisely the opposite of what the mercantilists recommend. Save, not spend. And or if you spend, well, you don't spend it on consumer goods, but you invest your money. Okay? And Adam Smith then showed, I won't go into this, that by pursuing trade policy, what you actually did was to reduce the productivity of capital. Government intervention into the economy channels available savings, available capital, into investments that are less productive than investments that would have been financed in a free market, as in the absence of that government intervention. Okay, so I won't go into these details. We'll now turn to Adam Smith's story. So I will just give you the details of Adam Smith's story. And I'll do this in 2 lectures today. I'll talk about the real aspect, that is mainly the non-monetary aspects of this growth story. Why and how savings promote growth. And in my lecture tomorrow, I will talk about the monetary aspect. So how does the same process play out in a monetary economy? And I will show you that by and large it's the same thing, only it's more convoluted. It's a little bit more difficult to follow through. Okay, so our outline this morning is we will talk first about briefly about the definition of savings, then go through the major forms and types of savings, and then I'll give you some rough notion about the quantitative importance of savings in our current economy, current economies, and then we'll go very briefly over the personal benefits of savings, and then I didn't put my computer. And then turn to the benefits, the aggregate benefits. That's the major thing. So in a little time we'll talk about the opinions of the bad economists, what a bad economist might have about the impact of savings. Okay, so what's the definition? Savings is that part of a person's income which is not currently used for consumption. So you have an identity, an accounting equation that we always use in economics classes, in which you're familiar with, namely the identity of the addition of consumption and savings equals revenue. Revenue equals consumption or savings. And this is always so, this is just an accounting equation. Now the important point here to stress is the following. Savings can be, a person can save in different contexts. Savings are not limited to the savings that we make in fiscal terms within what we call households, but actually the biggest parts of savings are constituted within what we call firms. This is important. The distinction between household and savings is not really an economic distinction. Right? In economics we have human action. This is the basic category. And so we have here fiscal terms. Why do we talk about household and savings? Well, because the government wanted to, well, tax its population, so out of mercy they said, okay, we'll tax companies a little less than the revenue that you use for your personal consumption. Okay, so we made this distinction. Right? But it would be wrong then just to look at a household revenue and what part of this is used for current consumption, current consumer expenditure, and see, okay, the rest of this is savings, just a tiny part. Actually, the biggest part of our household savings are what's called the household wealth. It is past revenue accumulated that has been saved and invested. And this, of course, in the case of the French economy, the German economy, the American economy, it's about 5 to 6 times the amount of current revenue. And so aggregate wealth, I mean, we have to be careful with the numbers because there's a huge error margin, but aggregate wealth is about 5 to 6 times GDP, a country's GDP. So what does this mean that we have all this wealth? Some of this is invested in both goods and durable goods, but a huge part of it is of course invested by companies. So we have this. The next thing to notice about savings is that savings are always used in a certain way. The savings are inevitably always invested. Say I have my monthly paycheck from the University of Angers of 1 million euros. They don't pay well, but I'll take what I get. And so I spend 400,000 euros this, on my consumption, so I have 600,000 euros in my bank account. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an investment. I choose to keep the money on my bank account, to keep this savings, that part of my income that I didn't use for consumption, to keep it on the bank account. So actually I make an investment. Of course I can also choose to invest it in another way. I can take the money from the bank account and buy things with it. So I can buy a house, I can buy a company, whatever. And so I turn this into another form. An investment, therefore, is a concrete form of saved revenue. And all savings are always invested. There is no such thing as a difference between savings and investment. In that account, Keynes was correct. Okay, it was one of the few things that Keynes got right. Maybe by accident. Production transforms savings. Right? So we use our savings, for example, to hire people and to buy raw materials. And with this labor that we hire and the raw materials that we've bought, we can create goods, either consumer goods or intermediate goods, producer goods. So we have original savings. This is an expression that comes from the Austrian economist Josef Sima. He said, well, we have an original form of savings which are consumer goods. Even if we have an economy that doesn't use money, we have savings. I mean, there's some consumer goods that we don't use for current consumption, that we save for later consumption, for deferred consumption. These are our savings. It's an original form of savings, the most fundamental form of savings, because it allows us to create other forms of savings. For example, producer goods. This is another form of investment, so then we turn original savings into producer goods, so intermediate goods in particular, capital goods, tools, machines, and they will then turn out eventually future consumer goods. And on the market, of course, we can transform our savings into other forms. We can buy producer goods, so not only create them ourselves, we can buy them, and we can buy, in the developed economy in particular, financial titles. By buying financial titles, we transfer our savings to somebody else and then use them in one of the aforementioned manners, also creating producer goods and consumer goods. Okay, so what are the main types of savings investments? The purchase of durable consumer goods, the purchase of producer goods, the purchase of financial titles, holding cash. As I said, there's a necessary implication, right, that all savings have a concrete physical form. Holding cash is an investment that we make. It's not necessarily always the best investment, but in a very uncertain economic environment, in which uncertainty is particularly high as in the present context, and the rising economy, many market participants use a huge amount of cash. Because cash cannot go bankrupt. If you have physical banknote in your hand, it can lose its purchasing power, but the banknote does not evaporate, usually. If you have a gold coin, or a silver coin, it does not evaporate. It doesn't hold, the gold coin doesn't hold banknote. So gold coins and silver coins, copper coins are natural monies. You can hold natural monies. Of course, there are famous literary figures that hold such natural monies. One of my heroes. Because he is a rich man, so he can actually have, you see, multiple uses of his savings, right? Can take a money bath, a gold bath. It's probably nicer than have a banknote bath or something. But then, of course, we can also hold fiat monies and money substitutes. So money substitutes would be demand deposits that we hold in banks, in particular. Okay. Now we turn to the next one and get some rough impression about the relative importance of savings. And the point I want to communicate now is that savings are actually the main source of aggregate spending. Contrary to what the mercantilists believed, contrary to what Keynes believed, and what the Keynesians still believe today, it's not, I mean, even if we don't reason in terms of cause and effect, and even if we don't apply any economic theory, it's not true, as a matter of fact, that consumer expenditure is the biggest part of aggregate expenditure. It's actually one of the smaller parts. The bigger parts are all sorts of expenditure resulting from savings. We get this confusion, so the mercantilists and the Keynesians are superficially right. If we look at GDP figures, current US GDP is something like $14 trillion, out of which very roughly 11, 12 trillion are spent on consumer goods. Okay, so if you look at these figures, you say, wow, 70% of the economy is actually driven by consumer expenditure. But GDP figures only include a part of overall savings, a part of gross savings. In GDP calculus, I see GDP. Oh, this doesn't work. It's another one. Expenditure is most pertinently included in the consumer expenditure. By its very nature, it's not an investment expenditure. So if consumer expenditure plus gross capital formation plus the difference between exports and imports. So that gives us the GDP figure. So we have here then for the US 11 trillion. This is 1.5, 2 trillion, and the rest we have actually in the case of the US a negative difference between exports and imports. So that's how we calculate this, the value added created by the nation within the year. It gives us the impression that gross capital formation, which results from savings, is just a tiny part of the economy. So with this entity, gross capital formation, and then we get this impression in the case of France, and the part of gross capital formation in the GDP before the crisis was 18%. In the case of the US, we have gross private, GPCF, gross private capital formation is about 16%. So overall capital formation, so government, public capital formation is a little bit more, get around 20%. But the implicit assumption of this is that the production process is timeless. Right? All expenditure occurs at the same time. And that's not true. Right? The truth is that the production process is time consuming. It actually occurs in a multi-stage process. And we have something like this. in different stages of production. We have here, this is the timeline. In this area here would be the area of consumer goods industries. All companies that produce it, that serve directly consumers. Their revenue and consumer expenditure. But they themselves, at a previous point of time, need to buy intermediate goods, raw materials, they need to hire labor. So they need to make expenditure before that. It doesn't occur at the same time. And they themselves as the suppliers, working in what the Austrian economists call a higher stage of production. The suppliers, they might work a month before they actually get to start, or a year before they get to start. And they themselves, before they get any revenue, selling their goods to the consumer goods industries, they themselves need to spend money to buy the factor of production that they need. And so on and so on. Right? They themselves as suppliers. So production is always spread out in time and multi-stage, especially in a very developed economy. So we have something like intermediate spending. We have the necessity to hire employees. And I give you here so the expressions that we find in national accounting. We have Europe, the SEC system of European accounting. I got the French acronym. It doesn't matter, right? So we have the standardized terms, which is intermediate spending or intermediate users, and we have the compensation of employees. And both of these expenditures, and that's the crucial point, need to be financed out of what? Well, out of savings. Where does the money come from that a company spends on payroll, that it spends on its employees? Where does the money come from that a company spends on intermediate goods? Typically, it comes not from the banks. That's what all my students think. Companies get their money from the banks. That's not true. What is the main source of revenue of a company?
It's cash flow.
It's cash flow, right? It's past revenue. In the past, it has sold products. So there's a revenue, whatever, of 120 million euros in the past year. So now it's sitting on this money. It can either eat it, right, or the owners can eat it so they can use it for consumption, but that's not what they usually do. They reinvest. And if they don't eat it but reinvest, what do? Well, they save, actually. It's savings. Right? Also, all this expenditure comes from money saved within the context of firms. Right? So ultimately, it's market participants, it's private citizens who make these savings. Because there's no need to do this, right? Nobody is legally obliged to reinvest the money earned by its company, right? You can just all eat it and then close shop and go walk away. You can do this, and some do. So it needs the conscious act of, conscious choice to save and use this money for further purchases. And from this we can see then that aggregate spending is actually driven by savings. So let's look at the case of the US. We have here aggregate spending in the US. And here I've given you the figures for the past 5 years. And for 2010 you see well, not all of the figures are yet available. We see here the GDP figures, okay? And here gross private capital formation. And so gross private capital formation, as you see here, is included in the GDP, so this is part of GDP, and I didn't give you consumer expenditure because I wanted to keep my table lean. So this is part of GDP. But that's not all the spending that occurs. And we have a rubric that is intermediate spending. So this is, so if you look at this other thing here, the spending that occurs there, and there, and there. Okay? This is the kind of spending. And this spending is almost as big as GDP. And I can tell you, actually it is, in every single year, bigger than consumer expenditure. Okay? So companies spend already this intermediate spending, which is as big, if not slightly bigger than consumer expenditure. Plus, they spend money on gross capital formation. Right? They buy fixed capital goods. Also another form of investment. And finally, companies spend money on people they hire, compensation of employees. All of this is money invested. Okay, so we can buy total investment is equal to intermediate spending plus gross capital formation, or gross private capital formation, plus compensation of employees. Right? And so this gives us, for example, for the year 2006, it gives us this figure here, $20,000 billion, $20 trillion. Okay, it's almost well, it's 60–70% more than GDP. So the actual amount that companies spend, which they spend coming out of their savings, is 70% more than total expenditure on final goods, accounted for in the GDP figure. This rubric that's important. It's called total commodity output. It's something that you find in American national accounting. It's the addition of intermediate spending and final spending. So GDP, intermediate spending plus GDP equals total commodity output. Okay, now, so we see that savings actually play a big role in the economy, a big role that is overlooked both by most economists who have been trained on the skim milk of Keynesian economics, don't learn much about savings, need to return back to classical economists and to Austrian economists who understand something about this. Right? So they grossly underrate the importance of savings, the sheer quantitative importance of savings. Now the task is now to analyze in a little bit more detail the benefits that result from savings. It's not because it's big that it's good. Right? If we look at these national accounting figures, the Keynesian economists might say, wow, that's terrible. I didn't even think that was as bad as that. Right? People spend way too much money on investment. They should consume much more. It's a miracle that we're still breathing. Right? Consumer expenditure should be 20 trillion, shouldn't be just 10. Right? So just looking at the figures doesn't give us the clue to the causal story. What is the cause of wealth? So let's look at this. So first of all, the benefits, the personal benefits of savings, I will go through this very, very fast because what we are mainly interested in are the aggregate benefits. Savings allow us to realize our projects. They protect us against potential losses of revenue. They protect us against other unforeseen events. They are a source of revenue. If we save for others, right, we can live what the Keynesians describe as the life of the rentier. We're just coupon clippers. But what is a coupon clipper? Typical coupon clipper in France would be Madame de Betancourt. Who has heard of Madame de Betancourt? Yeah, in France, right, and in Europe, we went through the media because there was a big family scandal in the past 2 years where all the heirs were disputing the billions of family wealth. And Madame de Betancourt is sort of the 80 or 90-year-old heiress, and her daughter was fighting her. Her mother was spending too much money on personal consumption. The daughter had a good sense, because she was just thinking of herself. She thought, well, the more mother spends, the less will be there for me to inherit from her. Right? But what Madame de Betancourt could do, of course, with her 8 or 10 billion, she's the owner of L'Oreal, and so the cosmetics firm, L'Oreal. So what she could do with her 8 billion euros of wealth, I mean, she could go ahead and just spend it on, well, maybe not all the lipsticks, but right? Nice furniture, clothes, and so on, and swimming pools in every single country of the world. She could do this, but she does not. She keeps the money invested, and by keeping it invested, well, she actually serves others. Why does she do this? Because for her, it's a source of revenue. 8 billion times whatever, 5%, or let's say just 5%, is a non-negligible amount of money. 400 billion 400 million euros revenue is not bad. It's a really big revenue, just by 250, so to say. It's actually more difficult than that. And of course, personal savings are also a tool for helping others. If this gives us satisfaction, we can make gifts, donations, we can sponsor events, such as this one. And we can also promote economic development. And we can promote economic development not only by making, let's say, investment as the World Bank or something, right, financing projects that are non-profitable. It's not, does not necessarily mean non-profit, it can also mean, well, for profit. I'm like Scrooge McDuck. Right? I enjoy savings, I relish in savings, and I hate consumer expenditure, and that's because I truly enjoy economic development. I like it if more and more money is being invested. Why not? It can be a personal benefit. Right? For the Keynesians, of course, this is impossible. Right? From the Keynesian point of view, the more money we save actually helps us personally, because we can do one of the first 5 things, but it's actually harmful for the economy as a whole. We'll get back to this point here. So the act of saving is always self-indulgence, it's always selfish. You never think of the economy as a whole. So let's turn now to aggregate benefits of savings. So the crucial point, this is the main point of this lecture. If you haven't grabbed your pen so far, now it's time to do it. And we'll proceed in 2 steps. First, we'll talk about the crucial law of roundabout production. According to the law of roundabout production, roundabout production means longer production, more convoluted production. This here is the scheme of a roundabout production process. The difference would be a primitive, non-roundabout production process which occurs just in one stage. In this type of economy, the only type of production that occurs is the production, the direct production of consumer goods. So here the producers transform original factor of production, that is labor and raw materials, directly into consumer goods. This here is a roundabout production structure because the final production of consumer goods is being served by previous production of intermediate goods and of capital goods. Okay. So this is more lengthy. It takes a longer time to eventually churn out the consumer goods. But what the law of roundabout production says is the more roundabout it is, the more productive does human labor become from an overall point of view. That is, let's say we have 1,000 hours of labor available in our economy. It's just a family economy. In a year we can spend 1,000 hours of labor. We can use all of this labor for the direct production of consumer goods. Or we can spread out our labor, the 1,000 hours, in for different stages. Use 200 hours for the production of consumer goods, 400 hours here and 400 hours here. Okay? So it's the same amount of labor, but because we create through this kind of structure more consumer goods, the productivity per hour work is greater. Now the question is, why is this so? This is the point to understand. In every production process, we use therefore human and natural forces. And if we just rely on human forces with very few raw material input, we could produce only so many goods. But we can increase our productivity by using more natural forces. That is, ultimately by creating tools that allow us to be more productive. For a fisherman, we'll come back on this example, we can create a net rather than fish with his raw hands. Carpenter can use hammers and nails and so on. He will be more productive than if he uses just wood constructions that he lays on one another, etc. Or he uses branches that he finds in the wood rather than cutting. So, but in order to use, so that the general point is that the more natural forces we use, the more productive becomes our labor. But in order to use those natural forces, we need time. We need to channel nature into convenient forms. We need time to build those things. We need time to transform them. We need time to build tools. We need time to transform original factors into final goods. So we get here to this law, right? And I state in a very approximate manner, the law is that the longer the production process, the more productive is human labor. So it's the difference between this kind of structure and this. Short structures of production are characteristic for primitive economies. In Africa, you have this kind of thing. You have one-stage or two-stage production processes, primitive production processes. What characterizes Western developed economies, but also Asian economies and so on, are long production processes. And they are more productive because they give us the time. What we do during this preparation of the eventual creation of consumer goods is to channel more and more natural forces, more natural helpers into the creation of the final consumer goods.
When we say longer production process, are you counting the time from the initiation of production to the final getting the profit and the end? Is that length of time linearly, or are you including all the simultaneous processes that take place? Because in the process of production, you have the specialization, so many different firms are producing these intermediate goods at the same time, and therefore it's not necessarily a longer chronological.
No, this is a separate thing, right? You have the division of labor, and so on, it's a separate force.
But the longer production process, are you including all the times of all the firms, even when they're simultaneous?
No, that will not be the case.
Not be the case?
Yeah. So what really makes the process more productive, for example, you can duplicate a primitive economy. Let's say you have a primitive economy.
Yeah.
Now you get 2 times as many people for integration. Right? But you don't extend the structure of production, the productivity of labor is just as before.
Right. You could have like somebody engaging in fishing, and then he takes time out to build a net, so you include the fishing time
Yes.
and the net time, and
Yes.
that's the one thing.
Yes.
Or you can say the fisherman continues to just fish, somebody else is at the same time building the net.
Yeah.
So therefore, are you adding, and these take place simultaneously?
Yeah, they take place. Yeah, look, the net building that occurs with the simultaneous fishing actually serves fishing that will take place later. It doesn't serve the fishing that goes on at the same time.
Right. So the longer process, you're adding up all the simultaneous processes that are going on.
Yeah, in that respect, it doesn't matter whether they actually occur simultaneous or not. Right? Really only matters which future production processes they serve. Okay. Starting from there, so we understand that we have interest in realizing longer production processes. Now the second step is to realize that in order to create these longer production processes, we need savings. Savings are needed to finance production. What does it mean to finance production? What's the background? Well, we use human labor during this longer production process. But human beings operate under what economists call the constraint of the stomach. Okay? We need to consume just in order to stay alive, right? To engage in production processes. And actually, in most cases, we don't just want to stay alive, but we want to live pleasantly, or as pleasantly as possible, during the time of production. Okay. So the crucial thing is, every production process actually presupposes previous or simultaneous consumption. We need to consume in order to be able to produce. But what we consume cannot be the products, the consumer products that result from our ongoing production process, right? Of course. Right? So where does this consumption come from? Well, it comes from past revenue, from past creation of consumer goods that has not been used in past periods. So we need savings to sustain human beings involved in the creation of intermediate goods and of capital goods that will not, in the present period, turn out into consumer goods. We need to sustain those people, keep them alive, keep them consuming. In order to do this, we need savings. And this, of course, explains why only human beings need to be financed. Machines don't need to be financed. Land does not need to be financed. What we actually need to finance are always human beings. Right? Finance is a completely human phenomenon. It could not occur in a world of automatons, or, for example, in an angel economy. It's one of my favorite examples. Right? Angels wouldn't need finance, but then angels wouldn't need to consume. So it's really a human thing. So the more we have savings, the longer production processes are possible, and the higher therefore the productivity of labor. Let's look at an example. And again, today we'll just talk about real economies, or real aspects of the economy, not about the monetary side. So we'll look at the crucial economy and analyze how savings and consumption occurs here. So we have a fisherman who only fishes with his bare hands. And he produces on day one 2 fish. The 2 fish are therefore his revenue. It's of course real revenue. Right? How much does he consume? Well, it's 1 fish, so he saves another fish. Right? We have this equation, revenue equals consumption. Savings. Equation also, of course. He eats his fish, survives the day, he's happy. What does he do the next day? The next day, he doesn't fish, he doesn't work. His revenue is 0, but he still has a fish to consume. And he can consume another consumer good, which is leisure. He lies there on the ground, looks at the sun, well, maybe not too much, but maybe at the little birds, listens to their songs, thinks happy thoughts, evil thoughts, thinks with neighbors or something, plans wars, plans love songs, all these kind of things. So in a word, during this, what we call leisure time, it's not necessarily reproductive time, it's actually the time during which a lot of cultural activities take place, right? If only in the hand. So at the end of the day, then his savings have run down to 0, so he needs to work again. The next day he spends 10 hours fishing, until eventually he has caught 2 fish. He can eat 1, saves 1, and the next day again enjoys leisure and so on. So he lives, in a way, a more or less happy hand-to-mouth existence. Right? What he creates, what he produces is just sufficient for him to survive and to enjoy some other consumption which is his. Things change if we turn now to a growing crucial economy in which Crusoe starts saving. So on one of the days, in which he's just laying in the grass and thinking thoughts, he looks at a spider. The spider is catching fleas or other things with a net. He says, wow, this spider is smart. Then he has a terrible thought. I could learn from the spider. I could do the same thing. Imitation of nature, typical thing that we do in scientific research. So he has this plan, it's very intriguing. I could build a net. And he makes this plan. Thinks over during his leisure days. How would I go about creating a net myself? So he makes the plan, okay, so there are branches or lianes in the forest. So I need to grab some of those and turn them into a net. The net shouldn't be too thick, shouldn't be too small, and so on. So he has various plans. He needs some time to figure this out. Then of course he has never construed a net in his life. He just watches the spider. So it's a very risky undertaking. The 2 feet of entrepreneurship. But he eventually does it, and we'll just consider maybe he has 3 or 4 runs in which he fails, but now we consider the run in which he succeeds. So his plan most notably involves an economic component. He knows that by construing the net, he will need, for example, 4 days. But during the 4 days, he needs to consume, he needs to survive. So he needs to constitute savings ahead of the creation of the net. Right? So what he's doing now is to fish 4 days in a row, no more than a day. 4 days in a row. His revenue is 2 fish per day, and he consumes just 1 fish per day. So you see here, he renounces to his leisure, so consumption is reduced. He eats still the same amount of fish, but his total consumer benefits are being reduced. And so he builds up his savings. At the end of the 4th day, he has 4 fish. Now some of you are mean students and might think about yourself, the fish do a lot. But he's a smart guy, he's a proto-German, so he has dug a ground in the hole and put some water in it, puts the fish there. So, on day 5, he starts building his net. Right? And so, he needs 4 days to build the net, and on day 8 then he has to. During those 4 days he runs down his savings. You see it from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and at the end of the 8th day he doesn't have any more fish left. But at the end of the 8th day he has his net. He has a capital. And with the capital good, he appears on the 9th day, at the dawn of the day. The poor fish are trembling in the water, because today he will catch 13 fish. Okay. He eats 1, he has a saving of 12. Now, of course, he can do all kinds of things that he had been unable to do before. Now, actually think of creating, well, he can, of course, have a lot of leisure. Okay. He can just lay there for 2 weeks almost, right? Or he can, well, maybe construct a hut before he's been sleeping, whatever, on the ground, or a grotto, and now you set out to construct something. Actually, hunt deer, hunt some other animal, and get some clothing. Also be nice. So he can do all kinds of things that he has been unable to do before, thanks to savings. Thanks to this higher productivity that he obtains through the net construction. And of course, he can repair his net. Now, one of the points I would like to stress now is, of course, that the same process is also reversible. That is, the process is ultimately dependent on the value judgments of this person, of Crusoe. Crusoe has the moral guts and the moral desire to save in order to increase his future productivity. There is no necessity for him to do this. He could go on living his hand-to-mouth existence, a happy savage, day in, day out, for the rest of his life. There's no necessity of any sort to change. And so he makes a choice to do this. And it's not because once he has the net that the net will stay there forever. The net will eventually break. So he needs to repair the net. In order to repair the net, he needs again to set aside time. He needs again to save some fish in order to repair and renew the net or create some other tool. So there's nothing automatic there. If his personal subjective values change and he prefers to consume more and save less, well, then eventually his net will break and he will have to revert to the hand-to-mouth existence of this example. We went to a static, primitive economy. And the same thing is actually true in a more developed economy. In our economy too, developed, I think, capitalist economies, savings are not automatic. It's not a feat of nature that Madame de Betancourt saves the bulk of her money, rather than spends it on consumer goods. It's a moral choice. And if she doesn't do this, she herself will eventually be poor, but especially all the rest of us will be poor too. Okay, so we can turn then to conclude on the aggregate benefits of savings. We've seen, so we have higher productivity of human labor, resulting from roundabout production. Right? Savings are absolutely essential for allowing roundabout production. The more roundabout production we have, the more productive is human labor per hour. The second thing is also allow for technical progress. Technical progress depends on savings in two respects. The first one is that savings allow us to finance research and development. Remember again the example of our fisherman. This fisherman lies on the ground and watches, contemplates the spider. What is he doing? It's actually doing research and development. It's that, very primitive form, but it's that. And he couldn't do this if he didn't have leisure time. Why does he have leisure time? Because his savings are big enough. The higher our savings, the more time we can dedicate to this kind of things. All the people working in research and development departments or firms are paid out of what? Well, out of the firm's saved revenue, right? And reinvested revenue. All university professors are paid out of savings. Of course, because we have state universities, it's forced savings, having hand of the government, and handing it out to these certain professors such as myself. Right? But it's savings nevertheless. Right? Without savings, no research and development, no scientific progress, whatever. Okay, this is the first. Second, savings are needed to put research and development into practice. It's not because you have a great idea, a great theoretical breakthrough, let's say machine development, that the machine in question will spring into existence full-fledged. Right? You need to produce it. That is, again, you need to engage in roundabout production, creating this tool. How can you do this? Well, you need, again, to have savings. So therefore, it's wrong. It's a very frequent error in our days in which theories of creativity and research and so on are very popular, especially among economists, that there's the danger to consider technological process as some sort of an independent force. Technological progress is premised quite essentially on savings. Again, Africans have access to virtually all technology that we have in the West. They don't put it into practice. Why? Because they don't have savings. That is more precisely, as soon as anybody has savings, he doesn't invest it in this country, but in the West. Because they have the grabbing hand, as Professor Foldvary has reminded us yesterday, right? So they need to fear being expropriated by their own government, so they prefer investing the little savings that they have in the West. Therefore, all technological knowledge doesn't help them at all. It's just not the time. And finally, savings also allow for a large-scale division of labor. If you have a very primitive economy, again, let's say one-stage economy, then the division of labor is very restricted. You can choose your profession either among the consumer goods producing occupations. You become a carpenter or baker or whatever. You always transform natural resources, raw materials directly into consumer goods. That's all there is. If the economy becomes more roundabout, there are then additional fields of activities, additional professions, additional industries that appear. And new professions that we couldn't even think of before. For example, an accountant. Who needs an accountant in a crucial economy? Who needs a tax lawyer in a crucial economy and so on, right? All these professions appear only to the extent that the economy goes more roundabout. So the higher our savings, the stronger our savings, and the longer the production process, the greater can become the division of labor. So the potential for each individual to value it, to bring into play his or her own specific advantage, his or her own comparative advantage, grows. And so the higher our savings, the higher are the benefits that we can derive from the division of labor. And also, let's not forget that, of course, reinforcing the division of labor is tantamount to reinforcing social relations. In a very primitive economy, there's actually, well, you need to be a naturally born altruist in order to care for other human beings and so on. Right? But in a very developed exchange economy, you are materially dependent on a lot of other people. So you become, as a consequence, by necessity, more of a social human being. Right? There's a lot of cooperation within the industrial living of labor. And you, in order to be successful, you need actually to care for the projects of others, not just pretended interests. One big question that economists have raised is whether whether this is true for all forms of savings, or whether money hoarding would be an exception. So in fact, in particular, the Keynesian economists used to say, well, I mean, this is true as long as all of our savings are actually invested. But what happens if people hoard cash? So they save, and according to Hulsmann, they thereby invest in cash. But is this really beneficial for the economy? We don't buy original factors of production. We don't buy intermediate goods. We don't buy capital goods. So isn't this then a leak in the economy? Isn't money hoarding utterly antisocial? Scrooge McDuck, with taking his money bath, is really a sociopath from that point of view. He's accumulating all this money, and rather than spend it and keep the economy going, he enjoys and indulges in his own little pleasures of taking money baths. The point is, from the point of view of classical economics and Austrian economics, money hoarding is not an exception. What happens in the case of money hoarding is that we reduce the amount of money that is being used for spending. That is, we exercise a pressure on the price level. All prices will tend to fall. The prices of consumer goods and also the prices of producer goods. So let's say we have this form of spending here before, let's say we're on 120, 110, 190. So consumers spend 120 units of money, the firms here spend 110 units of money, these firms here spend 100 units of money, and these spend 90. Now, if money hoarding goes on, less money will be spent, but this does not necessarily mean that the economy cannot work anymore. Consider the following case. Let's say all prices fall to 50% of their previous level. There's just less money being spent, so there's a pressure on prices. That doesn't mean that the economy cannot work anymore. If the prices fall, let's say, to half of this, then each of these sectors, each of these industries can operate profitably as before, only at a lower price level. And if we have, let's say, if you have a revenue of 50,000 euros and you spend whatever 20,000 on rent, then you're in the same position as if, for example, your revenue would be 25,000 euros and you spend 10,000 euros on rent. And so in exactly the same position. So the level of spending per se is not relevant. Money hoarding, therefore, has an impact on the price level, but it does not actually prevent entrepreneurs from investing. What it actually amounts to is to say, well, I don't spend that money, but others are still free to spend their money, so I give, so to say, greater weight to the money units that are still being used. I don't spend my money, but because all others who still spend their money can now buy at lower prices, they have a bigger impact on the market. I will go into this in more detail tomorrow. Okay. Now I'll talk very briefly about some of the major sophisms of savings. This is a British economist who died in 1945 and has had a big impact on the economics profession. John Maynard Keynes, a person who never had an economics class in his life, but he was the son of a famous and good classical economist, John Neville Keynes, who was a good economist. So according to John Maynard Keynes, savings represent a leak in the circuit of spending. Something that is taken away from the economy. And of course, as I've tried to illustrate with my little numerical example over there, that's not necessarily the case. And as a rule, it is in fact not the case. But according to Keynes, so if we save and we take money out of the economy, so firms will diminish, they will become less profitable, and therefore they will invest less, in particular hire less people, because less labor is being used, production diminishes, and the economy is then impoverishing itself. So therefore there is something like a paradox of savings. Savings are paradoxical. Why? On the one hand, they seem to benefit the saver, but that holds only true on an individual level, not on the aggregate level, according to Keynes. An individual can enrich himself. Scrooge McDuck can enrich himself. He can take money off and so on. But Scrooge McDuck is a sociopath because he creates a leak of spending in the economic circuit. So profits shrink, companies can invest less, can only hire less people. And therefore, from an aggregate point of view, if everybody does this, or if even one person does it, if this one person is big enough, well, it will actually have a negative impact on the operation of the economy. Less things will be produced, so we will impoverish ourselves. We save ourselves to death. Okay? That's the paradox of saving. What holds true on an individual level does not hold true on an aggregate level. Right? One person can raise up in a movie theater to improve his perspective on the screen, but if everybody does the same thing, it doesn't work. Okay. So savers are ultimately selfish persons, right? They indulge in a little self-realization at the expense of the social benefit, the benefit of the larger whole. And that, of course, is a true paradox if we consider the content of my lecture. Right? If one holds true on the physical level, in real terms, the roundabout production necessitates savings and so on, and creates actually higher productivity of labor. How does this square with Keynes' story? And as I will explain to you in more detail tomorrow, the clue to refuting Keynes, to seeing his error, is the distinction between the price level and the relative prices. It's not because the price level diminishes that companies become less profitable. The profits of companies do not depend on the level of their revenue, but on the relationship between their revenue and their cost. If both cost and revenue diminish, the company is as profitable as before. That's, of course, the main error that will be our starting point tomorrow when we talk about the operation of the monetary fund. Okay, so I'm done for now. As I promised, I overdrew for 10 minutes. I took the time back that you have stolen from me at the beginning. I don't know whether we have time for questions. We do. Okay, so yes.
What if we want to look at from the fish perspective, when working from fish perspective? For example, I make a net, I catch 30 fish, and I throw them. I don't invest, wouldn't that be damage to the economy? I just waste them.
Oh, you just waste them? Well, I mean, from an economic point of view, that would be a form of consumption. Right? You just indulge in torturing fish. Leave them there and they rot in a little bowl, or even consumption. It could be a little fish farm. Yeah, but it would be a perverse fish farm. Right? He just enjoys. He actually spends a lot of labor in torturing fish.
Well, I've heard the following opinion more than once. Let's say that in the situation of an economic crisis, the economy is worsened by the fact that people are afraid to spend their money, and nobody invests because of the fear. So, what do you think on this?
Yeah, first of all, we have to, this argument is always presented to demonstrate to us how unselfish our government is in helping us out of this mess. Right? Because if we are timid and reluctant, then government step into place and do all the spending for us. Right? Yeah, this is of course nonsense. Right? What would happen in a free market setting if you have a crisis for whatever reason? Usually crises of this order of magnitude result from previous interventions. Okay. But what would happen then is that the economy melts down. Okay. But it doesn't melt down until you reach a black hole, a bottomless pit of nothing. Right? But until all companies that are in debt, and all households that are in debt have been liquidated. It is not, as under Ceausescu and Stalin, decapitated, but until they are bankrupt, so they're deprived of their assets. But what does this mean, they're deprived of their assets? It means that other people have the same assets. If you go bankrupt, if a firm goes bankrupt, what does it mean? Well, the assets actually revert to the creditors. Either the creditors take over the company. If the creditor takes over the company, you have what is called a debt equity swap. Right? Former debt was they turn into equity. So the old creditors are now the owners of the company. The company has no more debt. And so a free market process is actually very hard, cataclysmic, catastrophic, etc. In the short run, it can create very large percentages of unemployment, 30, 40, whatever %. But it has these short run disadvantages, but then the medium and the long run, of course, it cleanses the economy. And the great thing about the deflationary meltdown of the economy is that it gets rid of debt. It gets the economy rid of debt. And this is what is suffocating us right now. And this enormous mountain of debt that has been accumulated in the past decades. And everybody wants the fiction that this debt can be kept back or can be paid back, so nobody wants to be among those who lose among these. And of course it's very difficult, if not impossible, to arrange a political solution to determining who will be the losers. Try to do this. I mean, these guys, they cannot even figure out how to run a public gas company. They want to solve this problem. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So there again, right, the market process is much more efficient, much more smooth, but of course it's very good. You don't know which companies will grow first. Of course, those who will grow first will pay the greatest chunk of the losses. Will incur the greatest chunk of the losses. Yeah, so that's how a market solution will work. We don't need to do this. Ultimately, we have these two strategies in front of the crisis. In front of the crisis, either short-term policies plaster over the difficulties, bail out companies, and so on, with what? Well, with more credit created out of nothing, more debt. And the other solution is the market solution that companies go bankrupt. Companies and households.
In a democratic society, politicians will always be tempted for short-time solutions.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah, but okay. But ultimately, this is a matter of public opinion. And of course, politicians usually, for various reasons, right, that we might learn more about the rest of this week, don't have the guts to do this, but you cannot preclude it. If public opinion is informed about these choices, people might say, well, look, we prefer to have a short and brutal adjustment now, get over with it, and start again, rather than this kind of policy. And then there might be a majority for candidates with this kind of a platform. Right? So ultimately, that's why we're holding this kind of seminars, why you guys should know something about it, so that there's a slight possibility that eventually there might be a majority of this kind. Ultimately, the prospects are dim, right? Because then there are only exactly two solutions. One is hyperinflation, and the other one is totalitarianism. Right? You need to have the government run everything. There can be no longer any bailouts or bankruptcies.
But the inflation does not affect mostly those who make savings and is, facilitating the way and
well, in our present institutional context, yes.
I mean, those who are living on credit,
yeah,
month by month, year by year, they have only credit.
yeah.
Those who are saving are put in a situation of inflation. Inflation is taken from those who save and is given to those who are living on credit.
Again, in our present institutional context, yes, because most households, for example, save in the form of bank accounts or savings accounts and so on. Right? So in that case, they will of course lose in the inflationary process. But you can imagine a different institutional setup in which most savings would actually be used directly in equity.
In that case, households would not necessarily, the savers would not necessarily lose from the
Not necessarily to buy.
Yeah, again, so it depends on the institutional setup that you have.
And if you are in a situation to choose between bankruptcy and inflation, what do you want?
Okay, we should take 5 minutes break and meet at the first floor for further questions and the next conference session. Don't forget to put your choice in the paper, right?